Our fantasy bingo has been submitted. I completed hard mode and hero mode, although I'll remove the remaining reviews into video form sooner than later. It was a great jump in my reading, and I found a lot of new favorites. Only had a few duds in the mix, so we're going to run through the books and give you my ratings, just so you have another perspective on if you should also read these books as well. And we're going to talk about the books and the ratings after the intro. So my motivation for 2024 Our Fantasy Bingo was to sit and read 25 different physical books without fixating on certain authors or series. So really to force myself to read broadly while reading more physical books. It turns out it wasn't any lack of preparation or motivation or preferring audiobooks to physicals. Instead, really what I needed was reading glasses. Oh, isn't it fun to get old? Once I had those, my reading pace jumped right back up. Fast recap, the Reddit R Fantasy sub does an April 1st to March 31st challenge of 25 prompts. And to win, or win well enough that you get recognition on the fantasy sub, you have to read a book from each prompt. And you're only allowed one substitution. Then there's a hard mode, which makes the prompts quite a bit harder. And apparently, I like a little drama in my hobbies, so I went that way. All right. And so in March, if you completed your 25 prompts, you go over to R Fantasy and enter it in there. If, by the way, for a lot of you, especially those of you who are really well read, you might be able to beat it just off what you read. All right, let's go looking at the squares and we'll see what was read and what I had originally projected, right? Because a year ago, as a mood reader, a year ago, I was projecting what I was going to try to read. And I found out I actually did fairly decently on my projections. We'll see. I mean, there's some changes around. I'm labeling the squares the same as the scoring system has. My hair's flying everywhere. By going across the rows, top down, square one's the upper left, square 25 is the lower right. So the first row is my highest scoring row, coming in at an impressive 22 out of 25 possible stars. Square one, first in a series. The hard mode threw that into a series longer than 3 books. My plan was for Empire of Silence. It's the first of the Sun Eater series by Christopher Ruocchio, and that's what I read. And I loved it. I rated it 4.5 stars, which on my scale, 4.5, like a 4 means is a really good book. A 4.5 star means it's either a really fantastic book or it's a good book that still has resonance. I usually give like a half point for me thinking about it weeks to months later. That's how you stay in my consciousness for the good reasons. You get a bonus point. And this turned into my new favorite science fiction series. I dedicated one of my 2 long shelves to the Sun Eater shelf, right? So you know it made a solid impact. Square two, an alliterative title and hard mode throws that into 3 or more words starting with the same letter. My original plan was for Liza Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, and that's what I did. So threw that in as a 4.5 star. So what a start! 9 points in 2 squares. And I don't give a lot of 5s. I don't give a lot of 4.5s. Square 3 proves the point because Square 3 is under the surface and the hard mode is requiring at least half of the story to be underground or underwater. My original plan was for a book called Ocean Earth, and I even bought it. Well, truth be told, I forgot I bought it, so I bought it twice, and I still haven't read it. Yeah, I was saving it, and in the meantime, I discovered LitJoy Crate's annotated editions, and they did an edition that I just bought off a whim. The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie Oh. Remember, my daughter had read Axie Oh, and then she ended up reading it and liking it, and so it seemed like a fun thing to share. The book itself's decent; it's pretty good. The annotations definitely fall short of what Lee Bardugo does, but more about her later. I just saw the light go shoving over here. That was the doggo. The doggo's back. We'll see if he makes an appearance. I gave this 3 3/4 stars. Not a bad read, but yeah, it could have been a little bit better. Square four, Criminal. It's with the hard mode featuring a heist. Did I mention Lee Bardugo did annotated editions? Yeah. So the plan was a series that I'm still excited to read, which is Jade City by by Fonda Lee. I haven't read it yet. And arrogantly, I put up the cover of Le Site du Jade, thinking I could pull it off with my horrible French. Cue the narrator. He did not pull that off. But then I entered my addiction with the LitJoy Crate annotated editions, managed to snag a copy of Six Crows by Lee Bardugo on LitJoy's extra stock sale. By the way, this book sells for super high on resale, so I was never going to buy it unless it was off the extra stock sale, at least not their edition. Loved the quality, adored the annotations. The story was great. I give it 4.25 stars total. Was the book's not perfect, but it was definitely an enjoyable read. Square 5 is dreams. Now, hard mode requires that it be a mundane dream. That is non mystical, non magical, just ordinary dreams or nightmares. And my goal was to line up for Foundry side. I even found a copy for $1 in a library sell off. But I was holding out hope that Broken Binding, Illumicrate, or LitJoy does the series at one of their level of price points. But then I also had a book I was going to read, which is the YouTube darling, which is M.L. Wang's Sword of Kaigan. It was waiting. Turned out it has mundane dreams. You ever get there, you're just reading a book, you're not aiming for a square, and you go, wait a minute, that hovers that square. Suddenly it filled a square, and because it had mundane dreams. How much do I like Sword of Kaigan and even the next M.L. Wang book? Well, I have an M.L. Wang shelf. Yeah, 5 stars. The only complaint I have on that book is I want more. And that wraps up the best row. 4 of the 5 books were 4 stars, and only if they all were. The second row, here we're gonna get attacked. Come on. All right, hello. You gonna come up and say hi? Because I don't think they're gonna be able to see you down there. The dog has appeared. The second row comes in at a total of 17.25 stars out of 25. Again, it's not bad reads. It's just not as good as some of the better ones. And as a data nerd, it cracks me up that row 1 beats row 2 on every square except the lowest rated position in row 1, which was faced off against a 5-star in row 2. It's Chris 6 and Breton is attacking. Hello, Breton. Entitled animals. The hard mode calls for the animal to be a science fiction or fantasy animal. My original guess on where I was going to go is The Black Griffin by Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon. I did buy it, but I got it in paperback. But then, well, I bought a Dragon Booker 9 from the Broken Binding. So I went with that instead. And I ended up with Dragon Rider by Taran Matharu because I was sitting there and I went through a little run of dragon riding books. Related, I'd probably enjoy it more if I had kept it separated from the others. I only gave it 4 stars, maybe popped it a little higher at the end, as it rallied at the end and then it had resonance. Like it ended well and kept ending well. I try to do these all in one shoot, but not with the dog, and he was over there messing with stuff. So apologies. If you can tell, there's a little jump there. Bards. Square 7 bards. The hard mode requires that the character not just be a bard, but they be explicitly referred to as a bard. My initial plan was Tanya Huff's Sing the Four Quarters, and I have no idea if I would have liked it, but I do know I wish I had read that one instead. No, and what happened, I was at a bookstore and I spotted Bloody Rose by Nicholas Ames with Kings of the Wild, right? Has a great reputation. And that character, the main character, is explicitly called a bard. Sadly, the main character reminds us why everyone hates bards. That book it was not good, man. It was as good as a tone deaf drunk getting up and trying to sing karaoke. I only finished it for the bingo. Look, if you're making a book that's a wild rock and roll adventure, perhaps, I don't know, let us experience some of the fun. This was mostly sad. 2.5 stars. There are some good ideas. Even some of the characters. Like if I look back and go, oh, the character development looked good. The execution was off for me. Yeah, did not enjoy it. Which is funny because I saw another somebody who I watch on BookTube who posted that this was their new favorite fantasy. Wow, did we have different experiences there? That's not one of my favorites. Nope. Square 8, Prologues and Epilogue. Now, hard mode requires the use of both. Now, my original plan was going to be to go old school, which was Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. And I do intend to do a read of the Alan Lee illustrated editions. Right? They came out last year. I'm looking sharp. But newer books kind of shoved it out of the place. So, in fact, not only did I have one, I had two different reads in this spot, and both had been 5 stars. So the squares had two different 5 stars hanging out in it over time. Ended up, I moved one of them to row 3 to bump out a book that didn't get as many stars. And then I moved in the excellent The Children of Gods and Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless and let it take the spot. I love this book enough that is getting its own video. For now, 5 stars. I can't wait to read more from our ladies of the Irish mythology. Square 9, self-published or indie publisher. Hard mode throws that to having a requirement that there be fewer than 100 ratings on Goodreads, or that it be an indie publisher who did a AMA with our fantasy. Well, I goofed up in my original choosing. I was going to do Sword of Kaigan, apparently forgetting that hard mode exists because she's got more than 100 ratings. Someone on a Reddit post just had suggested they were getting Paladin and Necromancer by Adrian Miller. And it looked, I read the blurb, it looked good enough, so I went that route. And, a little more time or skill by the author in that book could have been north of 4 stars. But it wasn't. 2 3/4 stars. Square 10, a romantasy. Hard mode asks that the main character be LGBTQIA plus, so somewhere in there. This was always going to be a rough space for me because I don't read a lot of romantasy. Right? I want my main characters to have meaningful romance. I actually am happy when my characters have good romance. I don't want it to be the focus. So give me plot and romance. Usually I'm pretty happy. I didn't have a recommendation. As apparently sexy or smexy dragon writing didn't hit hard mode. A fine for another square came through to cover up the square, which is Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell. Being so mind-numbingly focused on the romance and overdoing it that anything else interesting that came in here was gone. I love the ingenuity of the story. I really do. And I like some of the characters. I ended up giving it 3 stars, where if I give a book 3 stars but still say it's boring, that's when they probably did most of the rest pretty well. It's just, man, let me have a red pen and I'll get that book to 4 stars just by crossing things out. Should have been a short story. Row 3 comes in at a respectable 21 of 25 possible stars. Square 11, Dark Academia. Hard mode is that the university is entirely mundane. My initial leaning was a guess that it would have worked for ML Rios if we were villains, but a cool version of Study in Drowning by Ava Reed was getting released, and I had ordered it because, well, it had really cool edges. And so I ended up reading that and liking it. Both my daughter and I both read it. We both enjoyed the story. In fact, what's funny is if you hear her, she'll talk about it worse than I do, but gave it more stars. She rates a little nicer. Anyways, Effie, man, Effie is so damn annoying to start, but the story grows well. She calms down. She even overcomes a lot of her societal biases. I rated this at 4 1/4 stars, and I've already pre-ordered the sequel. Square 12, multi-POV. Hard mode is at least 5 point of view characters. Originally, I was going to do The Failures by Benjamin Lyer, which had a ton of buzz. It never ended up making my reading cut. I have it. It just hasn't shown up on a list yet or shown up on one of the reading months. As soon as I hit that epilogue in The Children of Gods and Fighting Men, I went, oh, wait a minute. There's a prologue and an epilogue. I didn't realize it had one until I hit it. Like, what? It can fit multiple square. It can fit there. And then all of a sudden, I was able to move down the existing 5-star that was in that square that has way more POVs. I mean, it has more POVs in one book than most series have. So I let that slide on down. Enter the masterpiece that is The Gardens of the Moon, Malazan Book of the Fallen One by Steven Erikson. It is a solid 5 stars. I did a deep physical read. I was shocked at how many or how much of Gardens has in just things and elements and characters that show up 9 books later. Because I did do the audio all the way through on the Book of the Fallen. And then now going through and doing the physical, it's like, oh, this is amazing. It reinforces why Malazan is my favorite fantasy series. Square 13, published in 2024. Hard Mode mandates it be the author's debut novel. Again, this would have been a good one to slide the failures into. And that was where the original plan was wrong. Instead, out came Anybot by Sierra Greer. It's a fantastic tagline. Come for the sex doll. Okay, wait, what? Stay for the heartbreak of what it means to be human. Huh, all right. Well, the sex doll turned out that she's a decent character. I mean, she is nice and kind. And about as non-sexy as random pieces of plastic seem to be. Of no shame if that's what you prefer, but I mean, come on. But this book was lacking. I don't know why it got so much buzz. I mean, I went generous and gave it 3.5 stars, and that's probably mainly out of a desire to go over and punch the main human character. Square 14. Character with a disability. Hard Mode turns this into a main character that has a physical or a mental disability. This was always going to be easy for me. I planned for it and went with it. It's book 2 of the first Law trilogy. I knew Glotko was going to be a main character again. So it's a great book. 4.5 stars. I'm chomping at the bit to see how book 3 fits into next year's bingo. It's one of those where I have waited to read it specifically for next year's bingo. And if it doesn't fit, I'm reading it anyways. I just thought I'd get myself a free square. Square 15, published in the 1990s. Hard Mode is that the author has published something in the past 5 years. All right, I followed up my original plan and read Assassin's Apprentice. It's the Farsi trilogy #1 by Martha Wells, who has been writing short stories within the past 5 years. And, I can respect the story. I respect the writing, the quality of the book. That said, YA misery fiction isn't really my thing. I give it 3.75 stars because it's got so many parts that work. But it's really just a miserable book. It's about going and feeling sad. I know so many people who love it like it's a top 5 star. We all come from different places, so no shame on it. If you loved it, if you didn't love it, quick reminder: Illumicrate is doing a new series of it. I did the illustrated editions, which are really good value. I mean, the illustrated editions are $25 each. They're a really good value. They're thick, heavy books, thick paper, works well. Illumicrate's got a really pretty edition coming. I'm probably going to buy it and probably still end up reading book 2 just to see. And I don't know why, because I follow reviewers. I know book 2 and 3 aren't going to be any different. Maybe just as our character ages, I'll be able to click a little bit better with them. Guess we'll find out. Row 4 comes in with a rougher score. This time it was 17.75 out of 25 stars. I was shocked at which books carried the row. So Square 16, Orcs, Trolls, and Goblins, oh my. Hard Mode mandates that one of these be a main character. And I had it waiting. I was going to try it anyways. Legends and Lattes as a certified coffee hater. I'm not sure it was going to work. But it turned out it was fantastic. It turned out to be really good. Because what it is a horror story about an orc warrior addicting a virginal town to a plant-based insecticide to where they will fight to defend her. Or I suppose you could alternately claim that she was a caffeine enthusiast and wanted to spread her addiction. Has an absolutely lovable cast of characters. It's as cozy as any orc mercenary can be. Just great characters. Timbits or Timblits, whatever those were called. Definitely a lot of fun. 4 stars. I'm not sure what a cozy is going to need to do to get above a 4 from me. That's probably going to be hard on a cozy, right? Just because the stakes on a cozy just aren't there. Square 17, space opera. Hard mode says, well, any author but this one particular group. The term used is written by an author of a marginalized gender identity. And apparently I can't read hard mode, as my original guess was going to be Dan Simmons, who, as far as I know, does not fit the marginalized gender identity level. So I went with Ocean's Gadori by Elaine Yu Cho, which is it's a fun romp through space. It's a Korean American space opera, and it really fits that. Like she played into the being Korean American, so feeling a little out of place in both groups, not being really fluent in Korean. Yeah, it was an interesting way to take it. I give it 4 stars. It was an enjoyable read. Square 18, author of color. Hard mode also mandates this be the author or be a debut novel in the last 5 years. Now, my original plan was to get The Teller of Small Fortunes, which has since come in, but I'd already had another book that landed in the spot, and that was The Ministry of Time by, and I'm probably going to mispronounce her name, so Kalyani Bradley. I recall looking it up at the time, and I thought it wasn't as straightforward as it looked to me. I bought almost to head off complaints that our concept was too close to a Spanish TV show of the same name. And a lot of people were claiming, oh, well, this is directly a copy. Yeah, because an agency in charge of time travel is such a unique idea. And it turned into being a total Mary Sue. Had no insights into the character's culture. If you're going to have the author do the whole, this is my combination of who I am, and I'm going to introduce you to more of it, I love that, right? I mean, bring me in. Right now, I'm reading a Nigerian American's book. And yeah, I'm learning. That's what I love. Not this. This was basically the major input on culture that we got was that Brits are sometimes exclude her from things. Cool. And then it had the absolute weirdest sex scene that's just out of nowhere. Like, this made the sex scene in Water Moon look like it was premeditated. Like, this wasn't romantic, but it was graphic. And there you go. And, if there was a better setup, it might have worked. I'm not prude on these things. I just wanted to make sense. It didn't. It just felt like, and we got to the part where we needed to add this piece in. And then it's done, and it's gone again. I'm like, well, dang, how bad was it? All right, so 3.25 stars. Actually was a good idea. There's some good parts in it, so 3.25. Square 19, survival, with hard mode being no super viruses or pandemics. Now, I'm claiming Daughter's War as this, as it takes place a while after a horse pandemic. So this was trying not, the survival piece of this, just trying not to be eaten by goblins. Right. My original plan was to go Black Company by Glenn Cook, and I still want to read it, but I'm hoping one of the boxes or another small press pick it up, as the only special edition I've seen is Midworld Press, which sold out long ago, only had a 500 book run. Hopefully we'll get more choices. And so with that, I went for something that had to be a surefire winner, and that's The Daughter's War, Black Tongue Book Zero from Christopher Buhlman, e.g. Christoph the Comic Insulter from the Ren Fair scenes. I've seen him just absolutely rip into men and rip them apart. I've seen him pretend to do that to the ladies, but he was always, just say, took it a little too easy on them. So it wasn't worth paying for him to get your lady. You get guy friends instead. So I was expecting this razor wit to show up. The only problem is it didn't. Not at all. No. Instead, this was just a misery book at the level that would make Rob and Hob go, damn. This book was all backstory. It was boring as can be until the last 100 pages, where it finally takes off and does good things. 3.25 stars, primarily for the last 100 pages. It's way below what I was expecting, right? Especially with how good The Black Tongue Thieves gets reviewed. And I know a lot of people said this was their more favored book. I'm like, why? Now, we read it first. We looked it up, and we made the call to read I did it for a buddy read. We made the call to go with book zero first, and who knows, maybe that was a mistake. You looked it up online. They're like, oh, you could read either. Sometimes, though, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Or who knows? Maybe Black Tongue Thief isn't going to work for me either. Square 20. Judge a book by its cover. Hard mode, pick only what is, or pick based only upon what's on the cover or in the blurb. Right? So originally I planned to snag a book at the bookstore, but then somebody posted they were selling the Broken Bindings edition of the Bone Ships by R.J. Baker. I had no idea about it other than that it was by Broken Binding, and I could see the cover and the edges. That counts. I went for it. The books are gorgeous. All right, we're done with the good parts of the book. Now, it's some interesting imagination on the world building. Cool. Now we're definitely done. This did not work for me at all. This is the lowest rating we have here. It's 2.25 stars. If it wasn't for a square, I would have DNF'd it. If it wasn't that I paid a bunch of money for the series, I would have DNF'd it. I was debating if I had anything that I could just replace this with. But I didn't actually have any other physicals that were just read only for the cover. Right? My rule of thumb would be to be honest on these and to only choose it. If I chose the cover and then I read the blurb, cool. But if I'd already decided I was buying it off the cover, I didn't have any that I actually read based on that. Did have other purchases. Had some audiobooks, oddly enough, that fit that requirement. You know, it's kind of interesting when you choose an audiobook. You're like, I'm buying it. But then I kind of break. And my rules were this was all physicals. Row 5, it comes up with a 19.25 out of 25 stars. So puts it dead in the middle of all the rows. Square 21, set in a small town. Hard mode is the small town has to be on our world, though the town can be fictional. Originally, I was going to go with, and had even started, Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. But I don't know, I wasn't feeling it. You ever read like just a chapter in a book and go, not this time. So I put it down. It wasn't a DNF because it wasn't bad. I didn't dislike it. It just didn't call me to keep going. And just at that time, I'm like, I'm going to read something else. And by the time I got back to the square, I was reading Vita Nostra by Marina and Sergei Dyashenko. Dyashenko? I don't know. This book is just weird. Right? I mean, you ever read one of those books and you go, did she just pee coins? Did that just happen? Yeah, it's a weird book. And the whole way through it, as we're getting towards the end, and I saw people talking about how much I love this book, I'm trying to figure out, is there something deeper I'm missing? Or are the secrets really that easy to spot? Like, we get to the end and they're like, oh, this was the ending. I'm like, okay, I thought that was just an off piece. Like, that was the great reveal. No, 3 stars. I did like the vibe. That was about it. Square 22. 5 short stories that are science fiction or fantasy. Hard mode is an entire anthology or collection. I wasn't sure at the time. I ended up going with Exhalation by Ted Chiang. If possible, several of the stories in this short story collection felt too long. Apparently, I'm hard on short stories past flash fiction because some of these went for like 75 pages. I'm like, that should have been like 35. I get where it was coming from. Man, were you writing to a word count? 3.25 stars. Some of them are really good. I mean, if you like short stories and you're the kind of person who's going to give a bump off because you like short stories, feel free to go for it. Square 23, Eldritch Creatures, with hard mode saying not Cthulhu. Now, my initial thought and what I was guessing I was going to do is still on my TBR. In fact, at the time, I was like, I'm not going to spend the money on Kickstarter editions. Oh, how naive I was. I spent the money on Kickstarter editions. And I did. Yeah, I went for it. In fact, I even have the second one. And that was going to be Gunmetal Gods by Zamil Akhtar. Probably going to be showing up in 2025 on my book reads. I mean, he's got a nice business going with the Kickstarters. I mean, he decided to stop being traditionally published and be a Kickstarter publisher. But I saw a book I wanted to read being discussed, I think on a YouTube video, and it came in, it was so small and tiny that I just had a gap where I could read it in between books. And I ended up loving it. And that is Sister Samurai, a Champloo novella by Tatiana Obe. It's such a fun blend of Japanese samurai culture with blaxploitation films from the 70s. Like picture Foxy Brown if she were a trained order of female killers who battled demons to keep the world safe. Yeah, it was pure Foxy Brown fun. It's fabulous. Square 24. Oh, and I think I gave it, man, I thought I gave it like a 4.5. I certainly gave it at least a 4, maybe a little higher. I'll have to check. Square 24. Reference materials. Hard mode, at least 2 types of reference materials. So I hesitated coming up with what was going to be the plan on this. Like my original, I threw it out there as Sons of Darkness by Gaurav Mohanty, but that I was willing to pivot to whatever I was reading that actually happened to just had this. And as it so happens, I was reading The Will of the Many by James Islington, and it had multiple types of material. So that counts. I just decided to count it. I still need to reread the ending. I don't know if anyone has gotten to it and read the ending and went, the heck? I remember feeling that way. I think I must have went back because I'm looking at my story graph and I gave it 5 stars. And I don't remember giving it 5 stars. I thought I deducted a half for confusing me. So maybe I did go back. I'll go back again before the sequel comes out, which is coming out late in the year. But Will of the Many, right? Tons of people loved it. Square 25, book club or read along book. Hard mode is that it is an R fantasy book club. My plan was, and I followed through with, the very enjoyable God Killer. Book 1 of the Fallen Gods by Hannah Kaner. I liked it enough to that I ditched the paperback and replaced it with the Broken Binding edition. I also read the sequel, liked it, and now I'm waiting on the 3rd book to ship. So ended up giving God Killer 4 stars. I liked one of the things I like best about it is that you have an age range of characters. You have different POV characters, and you're giving us an age range so that you can have different levels of experience. Right? You've got characters like, man, my knees hurt, because that's part of reality. You're going to go out tromping through the woods when you've retired. Even if you retired in your 30s, man, if you're not used to that level of physical exertion again, things are going to start to hurt after a while. There goes. Our final count, I think I end up at 97.5 out of 125 possible stars. So just under a 4-star average, which to me is a heck of a run. A 4-star to me is a good book. Like a 4-star is you did good. 4.5 is you did great. 5-star, you did great. And I still think about it. Like that you have resonance and it's still keeping me in. I still think about this book. More importantly, that was 25 physical books from 25 different authors. Right? Again, I wanted to read broadly. Of these 25 books, probably half don't happen if it's not for bingo. Right? So that it worked out great for me on this because that's what I'm after. The counter is, yeah, okay, I likely would have finished more series if I wasn't doing fantasy bingo. That's the downside. So you ever have a year that you're going to try to finish a bunch of series, you might want to go ahead and count your audiobooks as it's working for bingo. A few little stats, just because I'm a data nerd and I like to get them. 6 U.S. trade hardcovers. So as we do it by vendor, 6 trade hardcovers, 5 broken binding special editions, 5 U.S. paperback editions, 2 LitJoy crate annotated editions, 2 U.S. collector's editions, 2 self-pub books, 1 Page and Wick special edition, and 1 Subterranean Press edition. Oh, and a UK trade. So for those keeping track, 20 hardcovers, 5 paperbacks. If you don't know, I prefer my hardcovers, and I prefer them not to be floppy. I end up liking that stiff British hardcover style. Now, a good question is, what is on the plan for our Fantasy Bingo 2025? What's it going to look like for me? I have decided that I no longer need the bump onto the physical reads, so I'm going to allow audiobooks. I suspect I'll do hard mode, but I'm going to have to check it out because sometimes I did notice doing hard mode here. Sometimes it made me read a book when I had another one I would have preferred to read for the square. So we'll find out if I'm going to do hard mode or not. Probably, but we'll see. It really depends on how many big audiobooks you have. Like right now, I'm reading or listening to a 44-hour book. That's like a month's worth of read for me. And we'll find out. So, again, of the remaining 2025 reading, really what I'm going to be focusing on is getting the Broken Binding special editions read, right? Because I'm doing extreme hardcore mode in the Broken Binding Club bingo, which is 25 Broken Binding editions meeting 25 different unique prompts by 25 unique authors. I think I'm the only one doing it because apparently I need a little stress in my life. Other than life. Yeah, because it's been such a great year for everybody that we need to add more stress. Thanks, everybody. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.